There are many ways that spirituality can turn abusive. Spiritual beliefs can be used to justify abuse, to cover up abuse, and even be abusive in and of themselves. I'm going to be talking about these abusive, friendly dynamics over the course of my career at length, but today I'm going to start with one, and that is the abuse in the spiritual field surrounding the concept of reactivity. The first thing to understand is that most people in the world, and even in the spiritual field, do not differentiate between a reaction and the actions that are inspired from a reaction. They're lumped into the same category. Let me give you an example. If you see a nasty comment from someone posted on your social media post, you may immediately react with feelings of being hurt, feeling shame, flushing red, feeling anger, and the impulse to fight back. This is a reaction. If you act on the impulse by posting a mean comment back, that is an action that was inspired by the reaction. We need to make the distinction between reactions and actions inspired by reactions. It doesn't take a genius to see that reactions can cause a lot of problems on the planet Earth. For example, let's say that a wife cheats on her husband and he gets so jealous, that's his reaction, that he then murders his wife. Nobody's going to look at that and be like, oh, that was good. Reactivity can lead to dangerous things, and if we've been hurt in the past by people becoming reactive, then it's easy for us to throw out reactivity with the bathwater and make all reactions and reactivity not okay. Traditional spiritual gurus have perfected a persona into the world of being individuals who either have no reactivity or who have entirely mastered their reactivity. They set the standard of not only what's expected of any master or teacher, but also the standard of what being a perfect human is. Therefore, our idea of what we all strive to be and must be in order to be perfectly loved is non-reactive. We imagine that in a state of non-reactivity, we are constantly open, unconditionally loving, and perfectly in control of ourselves. The bottom line is, if we subscribe to these ideas and face non-reactivity is what we expect from ourselves as well as each other. So what if I told you today that you can't actually control your initial primary reactions? Feelings don't exist inside of a vacuum. They only arise as a result of something else. This means feelings are always towards something or about something. When you came into this world, you were, in essence, engaging in the world through primarily felt perception. You came endowed with the capacity to perceive as well as reflexes. One of these reflexes, which is really common and most people know about, is the Moro reflex. You see this in infants, where when you hold them on their back with their hands loose, they instantly react as if they are falling. That reactivity is not something that the infant can actually control. The nervous system is going to take over. It doesn't matter what the cognitive mind is going to say or not say. Here's another example. The child does not have to think about being abandoned or the consequences of abandonment. When mom goes away, it simply has a reaction to that separation and cries out for its mother for her to come back. That's another example of a reaction. What we are dealing with here is cause and effect. Can you imagine expecting a dog to not react when it's kicked? Can you imagine poking a sea anemone with a stick and expecting it not to close up? Can you imagine expecting a baby calf not to cry out when it loses its mother in a field? Unless you are disconnected and dissociated, you will have a reaction to things in the world. It's called being alive. Our reactions also happen in direct proportion to what we've already experienced in our life. So it's really common to hear people talking about how someone overreacted. Actually, there is no such thing as overreaction. There's only ever reactions in direct proportion to what we've previously experienced before. We do this all the time, though, when someone reacts in a way that we wouldn't have reacted if we were in the same place. But guess what? You didn't have the same experience. Obviously, and I love using this scenario, but it's really, really good to use. Let's say that we're in the 4th of July party and there are fireworks going off. If somebody is freaking out and reacting as if they're getting shot at, we may go, God damn, that was an overreaction. But what if you knew that that person was at war? What if you knew that that person was reacting in direct proportion to what they were perceiving having occurred? I need you to understand that there's no such thing as an overreaction. Your experiences become encoded in your nervous system. Your nervous system then reacts accordingly. For this reason, I want you to watch my video titled Drama, How to Avoid Drama and Drama Queens. The most abusive hallmark of an abusive home environment, usually those of us who are familiar with dysfunctional home dynamics, this takes place in the home with a narcissist. What will happen is that the narcissist usually will inflict some kind of injury. They'll do something. Now, the person who reacts to that something is then made the bad guy. So it's not what I did, it's how you reacted that's the problem. A few years back, I was working with a woman who grew up in this type of a dynamic with a severely abusive man. Now, in this particular memory, just to give you a picture of how this goes, she was tied to a hitching post. And this man who was abusing her in her childhood was forcibly raping her. The force of the rape caused her to have a bloody nose. When he got done raping her, and he noticed the fact that she was not only crying but having a bloody nose, it's not the fact that he raped her that was the problem, it's the fact that she's so weak for having a bloody nose and crying. I'm going to tell you a reality of our physical universe, which is not really something that most people who are spiritual want to accept. We live in a universe based on cause and effect. Now, I know that that can get highly complicated in a quantum universe, but here's the thing. If someone punches you hard enough in the nose, it's bleeding. Guess what? If someone sets up to punch you, you're going to flinch. You're going to feel the hit of adrenaline. So you can understand the potential spiritual abuse that can take place when we make an enemy of reactivity altogether, I want you to picture this. I want you to pretend that I walk up to you and I punch you in the nose, and it starts bleeding. And then I go, wow, something must seriously be wrong with you because your nose is bleeding right now. Like, you need to get that handled. Maybe we should take you to see someone. In the spiritual communities, we are doing this to ourselves and to each other all the time. We can't own the shame of having done something that caused a negative reaction, so we immediately make the person wrong for having a negative reaction. And even more wrong for any action inspired from that negative reaction. And this is called shame deflection. To learn more about this dynamic of shame deflection, I ask you to watch my videos titled Deflection, the Coping Mechanism from Hell, and the #1 relationship obstacle and how to dissolve it. If people refuse to feel their own shame, they can't take responsibility. This is true if someone is perpetually in the victim role to escape responsibility, or if someone is doing something to hurt others and will not accept that fact and thus makes the victim the one to blame for his or her reactions. I'm going to give you a tiny, and I mean infinitesimal, tiny little piece of an example of how this works in spiritual communities. We expect ourselves and each other to have no reaction when someone betrays us. It's just a part of us betraying us, and so if you just focus on that, you won't get mad back. We expect ourselves and each other to have no reaction when horrible memories are triggered. It's the past, it's not now. If we can just be in the now, we won't feel those feelings. We expect ourselves and each other to have no reaction when someone says something painful to us. Try to see them with compassion instead. They wouldn't be doing it if they were in even worse pain. We expect ourselves and each other to have no reaction when we lose our loved ones. There's no death, and if you feel loss, you're stuck in illusion. Do you see how this goes yet? I could make a list 5,000 miles long about how spiritual beliefs are used to suppress reaction and to make reaction wrong. They're used to shame you if you have a reaction. In other words, if you have a reaction, you're falling short of the standard of human perfection and something is wrong with you. How many times in social circles have you heard the following statements? How people treat you is their karma, and how you react is your karma. Or, it's not what happens, it's how you respond to it. Or, how you react emotionally is your responsibility. Like I said, it genuinely takes a freaking idiot to not see that our reactivity, if it goes completely unchecked and if we're unaware of it specifically, that can lead to some seriously damaging ends. Nobody's arguing with that. But what I'm here to present to you today is the real danger in making an enemy of reactivity. We can use these teachings to avoid looking at and owning the impact we have on others completely. That can lead to a wickedly painful world. One where, as if it's not bad enough that we did something that had negative impact on someone and hurt them, we also make them feel like something's wrong with them for feeling bad or getting hurt or having a negative reaction when we did that thing. We can use these beliefs to completely avoid seriously looking at what we're doing to other people and what we need to do differently. We can use these beliefs to shame ourselves on top of our pain, which creates even more reactivity. Aside from the obvious external world of pain we can create through doing this, What I'm really concerned about is that we can create an atmosphere of such incredible toxic shame and self-blame by doing this. If we have this attitude that reactions are not okay, we will make an enemy of our own emotions. That's what will happen. So as if it's not bad enough that they are occurring, and guess what? You can't help that. What will happen is that on top of it, you'll feel like something is really bad and messed up about you for that. In other words, every time you have a negative reaction to something, you'll believe you're bad and wrong for having it, or that something needs to be fixed about you if you even had the reaction. Therefore, instead of being able to address the very valid reaction you had, you will immediately unconsciously invalidate it. So this is how this works. You have a painful reaction. All people do. If you kick a dog, it's not going to feel good. So there's that negative feeling. Now, if you have the judgment that it's not okay to have a reaction to something, then all of that, it's not okay, this needs to be fixed, I'm not a good person because I had that reaction, slides over the top, kind of like ice over water. Now, the only way to actually deal with your reactivity, which is what we need to be doing, not getting away from reactivity, we need to be caretaking our reactivity. You can't actually get down into it if you do that. Instead, you're resting over the ice, kind of fighting with the ice, and there's nothing you can do to make yourself feel better. The shame will, in essence, suppress our reaction, but the pressure of it will cause so much pain that we'll either explode or collapse. And so often when we overreact, quote unquote, in an emotional crisis or have an emotional breakdown, this is the tormenting process that is occurring within us. These beliefs lead to bigger reactions instead of smaller ones. I have to mention at this point that if this is a chronic pattern in your childhood, it's a guarantee that the caretakers you had in your life couldn't own that they ever caused a negative reaction within you. These were people who couldn't own their own shame. So what happened when they inflicted some kind of pain that caused you to have a negative reaction? They made you the problem for having the reaction. They took no responsibility for causing it, and instead decided the negative reaction could not possibly be warranted. If any of you suffered from bulimia, or were cutters, or were diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, you can thank this pattern for a lot of it. I know that if many of you are watching this and you've already made an enemy of reactivity, then you're almost getting triggered when I'm talking, because what you're thinking is, oh my gosh, I'm just going to condone reactive abuse. So for example, if we condone reactivity, all we're going to do is say, fine, it's okay to just get mad and murder people. Revenge is fine, and all of this type of highly abusive stuff is fine. That's why you want to make an enemy of reactivity in the first place, right? Because you think that's where the world is headed if you make it okay. Again, I want to say that we have to separate out the concept of reaction from the action that that reaction inspires, and stop judging reaction is not okay. You've got to accept that you're going to have a reaction. Doesn't matter whether you want to or not. And that initial reaction is going to occur at a much more primal level, far below your capacity to cognitively understand something so as to stop it in the process of occurring. And at that level, there is no such thing as overreacting. If we accept this, then we meet our reactivity. We have to begin to caretake our reactions as if there's a real reason for the reaction. A real reaction that was either caused or triggered by someone else. This is the real responsibility we have, is to face it as if it is valid because it is. If we sink into victimhood, we avoid taking responsibility for caretaking our pain, which might not only involve finding ways to heal and feel better, but also asking a person to change behavior towards us. If we sink into the opposite, which is shame for having a reaction to being hurt, we also take no responsibility for caretaking our very real reaction. Every reaction that you have is valid and real because it's coming from a real place. The question is, what is that place? As long as you're alive, you're going to have reactions, and so is everyone else. Expecting yourself to read a terrible comment that somebody has put on your Facebook wall and to have no reaction is super damaging. Expecting yourself to lose a loved one, not really feel grief, definitely not for long, really abusive. If we can see these initial reactions as valid and real, so as to not add shame on top of them, we can figure out what that reaction is telling us about our truth in the moment, and about our past unresolved pain, and about what we actually need in this moment. We can use them to become more aware. We can address them like we would address real wounds, and by doing that, the actions we take towards others as a result of our reactions will actually change. If a trigger is to blame in a situation where you're having a reaction to something that somebody else is doing, it probably isn't their fault in that moment that you're feeling the way that you're feeling, but that doesn't make the way that you're feeling and the reaction you're having not okay and not valid. It is absolutely valid. So blaming them for the trigger isn't fair, but neither is expecting yourself not to have it, or telling yourself that something is sick or wrong with you because you have it, or telling yourself that because this is a trigger you shouldn't have the reaction towards the new situation. So let's pretend that a dog who was battered goes to a new home, and that new home is super loving. You don't look at the dog and say, oh, it shouldn't be having that reaction, this is ridiculous, it's just a trigger, even though it's in a loving home. No. That's going to be a really, really intense process of rehabilitation that needs to take place. So we're not doing this with dogs. Why are we doing this with each other? We have the tendency of believing that if we just changed our perspective, or changed our perceptions of what's occurring, or changed the way we were thinking, or were enlightened enough, we wouldn't have reactions in the first place. Can you see that this puts you at war with reactions in the first place? You can't take care of something you don't think should be there in the first place. You're not going to be able to meet something with compassion if you're judgmental towards it in the first place. You're already pushing it away. So how can you pull it close enough to explore it, examine it, and caretake it? I realize I'm beating a dead horse here, but if you have a reaction, it is very real. In the same way that if someone walked up to you and hit your leg with a lead pipe and it broke, you wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going wrong. It couldn't possibly happen this way. No, actually, that would be exactly in order with the reaction that we'd expect your leg to have to being hit with a metal pipe. But it works the same way with emotions. We have to look at the cause. We have to look at what it caused us to feel in our bodies and feel emotionally, and what it caused us to think. We have to ask what it is letting us know about what we need. We need to meet those needs, and this includes communicating needs that we have to people around us. Action actually comes after reaction. We have made an enemy of reactions because we confuse actions that are taken as a result of a reaction as a reaction. We can intercept this chain from reaction to action, but we need to stop expecting ourselves to intercept this chain from external event to reaction. Because let's just be honest, it's freaking futile. Your reaction is always legitimate. So what I want you to do is to let your altering of your perceptions, let your exploring of your emotions, and all of those types of steps you would usually take to try to avoid reaction in the first place, instead be a way of caretaking or taking care of the reaction that has occurred. If we want to learn to intercept the chain between reaction and action, what we have to do is to stop trying to intercept the chain between action that happened and the reaction we had to it. Here's the thing, if we're making an enemy of reactions, you don't even have to say anything. People can feel it in your energy field. If you act like a reaction is not legitimate, it will escalate the situation. People will be 1,000 times more likely to take an action that causes serious impact from reaction that is treated as if it's not legitimate. Any reaction you have can be used as a tool to access more awareness about your personal truth and universal truth. But beware of expecting yourself to not have a reaction in the first place. And especially beware of feeling shame for having a reaction. Have a good week.